Let's go, Rob.
Hey, this is Rob Anspach, and welcome to another edition of eHeroes. Now, some of you might not feel fulfilled and can't shake the thought of that you should be doing something deeper. Well, I want to introduce you to Diana Patton, who will teach you how to pivot and rise to become
Mhm.
better entrepreneurs. Because really, that's what we want to be, in this world today.
Absolutely.
So, thank you, Diana, for being here. And
Thanks,
you know,
Rob.
it's awesome. I'm looking at your website. I'm looking at what you're doing, and
Mhm.
all you entrepreneurs out there, pay attention because I know right now it's uncertain times. You guys got some fears. Diana's going to help.
Yes, I am so excited to be here. Thank you so much, Rob. A lot of it has to do with our own personal challenges. A lot of us come to challenging situations with a basket full of, programs in our own minds that are stopping us, right?
Mhm.
Because we start to tap into those fears. And I'm not immune. I've gone through that, and I realized in and about the time the pandemic hit that the business that I was in, which was really helping schools rise, helping schools learn how to push past their own challenges, but dealing with social emotional learning and trauma, that the business that I had worked on wasn't scalable.
Yeah.
So I needed to go back to something that I know I can do personally, which is help women, push past their challenges and adversities to find their voice, to use that voice to advocate for themselves, for others, and for the causes that they believe in, because there are plenty of causes that all of us can dive into. But being a professional woman, going through a whole bunch of stuff, I realized I during my path, I wasn't really using my voice the
Right.
right way. So I think I'm pretty well positioned to help women in that regard, and with the Pivot and Rise Mastermind.
Oh yeah. And
Yeah.
you know, I have adult kids, and I look at them and I kind of hope that one day they'll be an entrepreneur. But
Mm, yeah.
not everybody can.
Yeah.
Um, but right now I see things, because of this pandemic that, people don't want to take risks. I get it.
Hmm.
But,
Hmm.
you know, you have divorced women, divorced men, kids of divorced parents that now are being taught that all this fear, it just keeps going to the next generation, Now you get these kids that you say, "Do you want to start a business?" And they're like, "No, I'll go work for McDonald's."
Hmm.
And really, that's not really that's a starting job. It's not a career.
Hmm.
But I think that fear drives into people,
Absolutely.
and I think it needs to be taught in school
Yes,
how to
I think
overcome it.
absolutely. And I feel that the research shows, at least in the social emotional learning, and then with regard to trauma, there's a whole body of research on trauma informed care, and how if we start early, we can really help young people understand how to get over that false evidence appearing real, which is
Hmm.
fear, and having us being able to get a set of tools to help with that. One of them, of course, that is talked about a lot, and I talk about a lot in my own practice, is mindfulness, right? And I'm
Hmm.
sure you've had a lot of guests who, you have to have a practice, you
Right.
have to have a daily practice to get yourself to understand what's going on with this mind chatter, right? Most of us aren't living in the present moment. Most of us are ruminating over what's happened in the past, or we're fearful of what's going to come forward.
Hmm.
And until you start to kind of plant seeds within your mind about what is positive to come and
Right.
how to get over that by meditating, for me, of course, I have a deep faith, so prayer plays a huge role in my overall ability to move forward,
Hmm.
and believing in that, because it's based on these belief systems, and these belief systems that you're talking about, these belief systems, they're planted
Yeah.
from generation, generation, generation. And then all of a sudden, you're right. Why would I want to do that? And I, of course, in my work, and my work a lot with professional women, we get to a point and we stop,
Hmm.
and we're not moving forward because we're trying to do what everyone else says do. And we're
Right.
not paying attention to the gift that's really, really deep inside of us. Because if we really did that, and if we're taught this at a young age, could you imagine these kids graduating, if they teach that stuff in school, that by the time they start to become ready for their profession. And a lot of kids, if they started really tapping in, they'd be doing that right now. And some are,
Right.
already, tapping into that when you get to where a lot of myself and other professional women are, we don't have to work the next 20 years to figure out and undo a lot of the stuff that we've been programmed to believe.
Oh yeah.
That's a huge part that I pay attention to and help women with.
Well, the media doesn't help.
Yeah,
The
well,
media is just filled with so much toxicity. And
mhm,
same with social media. I love social media. I've written books on social media, but
right.
I've always tried to exemplify the positive of those networks. And but when you're looking at that stuff constantly, day in,
Mhm.
day out, you become what you read.
Absolutely. Whatever you focus on expands. I mean, that's the premise and foundational understanding. And it's like a computer, right? We have to absorb that and that becomes a part of what we're going to put out.
Mhm.
How do you absorb that? I've just learned that you have to really, stand guard at the door of your mind to really make certain that you're guarding what's coming into your mind. And for me and for a lot of the clients that I attract,
Mhm.
we already have childhood trauma,
Yeah.
right? There's this study called Adverse Childhood Experiences. I don't know if you've heard of it, but it's ACE. And
Mm.
it was a study done by the Center for Disease Control and Kaiser Permanente in 1994. And it studied these kids who go through trauma, and it really started to analyze their inability to be able to be resilient.
Right.
And they basically freeze, right?
Yeah.
With these traumatic stress disorders. So when you couple that childhood, trauma in an adult form, and then you add on layers upon layers of, current trauma, our COVID, you've got people who are losing their jobs. For me personally, I got an aunt and uncle currently right now in the hospital with COVID.
Mhm.
And, couple that with the politics going on today, that's enough to put someone in a corner,
Oh
never
yeah.
to get out. So I always say, lower the volume of what's going on in the outside world and spend more time on what's going, because the wonderful creativity and innovation that you're able to create, if you can close that out, is beyond what this world has even seen, because it's already inside you. The gifts are already inside of you,
Mhm.
but you haven't even begun to tap into it because you don't
Right.
have room,
Right.
right? A lot of people don't have room for that.
Yeah. I mean, when I was in
Yeah.
high school, and we're going back 35 years,
Mhm.
none of my friends were taking medication for anything.
Right.
And the kids today, I'm hearing that 50% of grade school kids are taking some type of antidepressant. What's
Mhm.
going on here? I mean, what are we teaching these kids? We can't just
Yeah.
keep them doped up the rest of their lives. They
Yeah.
have to
Well,
be able to cope.
yeah.
And you know, we're giving them kind of these band-aids. Hey, take the drug, but we're not giving them anything to cope. No coping
Right.
mechanism.
Right, Rob. Well, we're dealing with a huge tsunami of social media. Did you see that movie that was it Netflix, The Social Dilemma? Have you seen it?
I haven't seen it yet, but
Oh
it's on
my
my list.
gosh, you need to check it out, because really, I mean, granted, there are parts of it that kind of a little hokey from time to time, but it's really good because it talks about how these kids are being lulled in to, really this fantasy world and
Yeah.
social media. And, and the studies are showing that that really is what's suppressing and
Hmm.
oppressing a lot of young people today.
Yeah.
That is it's kind of like I would imagine that when people were studying alcohol and the effects of alcohol and driving, and they
Hmm.
came up with these limits, right? They came
Right.
up with these guidelines to help young people to protect themselves, to protect their frail minds. Same thing is going to have to happen with social media.
Yeah.
Now, when is it going to happen? I don't know, but we need to talk about that more. And so I can't imagine what those kids are going to be like when they turn 25,
Right.
right? When they're having to deal and cope with life. So yeah, you're right. You're right about that. And we need to really work hard, and that's part of the reason why I was doing work in schools with my Rise with Diana,
Hmm.
my Rise program. And so was have been doing a lot there, but then also helping adults, right?
Hmm.
These educators to really understand the impact that they can have upon a young person in their school if they themselves begin to own their own issues and then work through them. They, of course, will be better equipped to help someone else. There's nothing worse than having someone tell you what to do and they themselves aren't not practicing it.
Yeah.
And so this is a huge, huge part of a lot of the work that I do in helping, women to find their calling
Right.
and to really focus on, taking the steps to undo a lot of the things that they've been having to deal
Well,
with in their
let's
lives.
talk about
Mhm.
your program, your
Yeah,
Rise with
sure.
Diana.
Mhm.
How did that start? And I mean, what was the motivation that you had to start it?
Well, Rob, I grew up with trauma. I had an abusive father, five older sisters, one younger brother. So everything starts with my story of wanting someone to see me, of
Mhm.
wanting someone to recognize me, help me, please rescue me. And, seeing my sister go through all the things that she went through, and we were always in school. I mean, we were those kids who really never missed school because we knew school was an opportunity for us to, have some stability,
Mhm.
because when we went home, it just seemed like it was really challenging all the time. So for me, it started there. And being the sixth child, I've always been an advocate. I've always been like, why are we doing that? What are we doing? Can't we do this? Why can't we do this? Oh, that young kid who just won't be quiet. That was me. And I was always challenging systems, challenging the way that we do things. And my brother, who was always bullied, we had a white dad and a black mom. And so back in the 70s and 80s, that wasn't a popular
Yeah.
thing. And my brother was bullied a lot. And I was always trying to fight my brother's battles. But I was like, why isn't anybody else at school trying to help us? Why isn't anyone stepping in? And so that drove me.
Yeah.
I mean, it made me who I am. It drove me to, become an attorney.
Mhm.
I decided that I needed to go out here and try and fight these issues, and had a little bit of a practice as an attorney. But then what shifted for me was I decided that I wanted to become an integrative health coach. So I learned about, advocacy as an
Mhm.
attorney, but then also a more holistic approach to life
Right.
and helping people because I had to work on my own self. So going to this school called Integrative Nutrition helped me a lot to
Mhm.
work on my own self. And then couple that with my own practice, I realized the work that I needed to do was to help people get through a lot of the challenges that I had to go through. And then also to realize I'm always looking for people who want to help others because that's what I wanted as a kid.
Yeah.
I think what drives you,
Well,
you have to look at what you wanted, how you are as an older person,
mhm.
and what you wanted as a child.
Right.
So I'm always looking, making certain that I'm looking through that young girl's eyes,
Yeah.
this little 14-year-old Diana.
And the thing is, you said it starts with your story, and this
Yes.
is what I've been sharing with people for a long, long time. In fact, in my very
Mhm.
first book, Share, the very
Mhm.
first chapter was share your story,
That's awesome,
because
Rob.
without people knowing where you came from, they have
Absolutely.
no idea how you can help them.
Come on,
And
brother.
there's no trust, there's no like, there's no, there people just need to have that connection.
You know, and a lot of the people that I work with, they've been taught just business and personal, stay separate, don't
Yeah.
talk about yourself. And especially in school. I mean,
Yeah.
educators were taught, because I've only had a small little bit of teaching,
Mhm.
but educators have been taught you keep this separate. Don't let the kids know who you are,
Right.
And now with COVID, right, all of that hit like right then, and then, but they don't really know their students
Yeah.
because they don't share themselves on social media. They keep everything separate. But I'm like, why not share your story?
Yeah.
I mean, that's the connecting piece. All kids are doing right now is connecting through stories.
Yeah.
TikTok, everything's about a story,
Yeah.
right? You have all these different social media outlets for people to want to share. And so I find that those who are less likely to be vulnerable, to be transparent, those are the ones who aren't really showing up fully
Mhm.
present, right? And you want to talk about a unifier today in our world because we need healing, we need unity, we need people to come together. We need to be able to share our stories.
Yeah, and I
Because then
think
you
that
can you can understand where people are coming from,
right,
right,
and
Rob?
I think that the more these kids share their stories, you're going to have
Mhm.
less bullying. You're going to have less cyberbullying, which is prevalent because of social media.
Absolutely.
And if we can connect these kids to their stories, they're going to grow up appreciating each other a little bit better.
Absolutely. I really, as adults, we have to model this. We have to be the ones to model that in ourselves. And if you, and I just say this all the time, whoever's in the business of helping people transform, believe in themselves, have a set of tools that will help them become resilient,
Mhm.
you have to be the one who's modeling that.
Right.
And, I like to use Brene Brown a lot, her research in helping you share your story, but it requires you to rid yourself of shame.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of healing that a lot of people have to go through, and shifting that blame from to other people. For me, I had to forgive my dad.
Mhm.
I had to forgive my dad. Forgiveness is so counterculture, and being a social justice advocate, that's what I do. Social justice advocate. I do talk about self care, diversity, inclusion. All that stuff plays a role in my work. And you can't be an effective advocate. You can't be an effective leader of people
Mhm.
unless you really begin to get down to the root and you start to realize what really is holding you back. We started off with fear. We started talking about fear.
Mhm.
What really is at the root of a lot of fear is a lot of unforgiveness and shame
Yeah.
and blame and guilt.
Well, and a lot of people like to, I think, use their religion.
Mhm.
And I've been with the Catholic Church for all my life,
Yeah.
but I see what they do, and they use shame. Oh,
Hmm.
since you're gay or they're this or you're that, you can't have anything to do with us. No, no,
Hmm.
no. How is that
That
beneficial
does.
to any child or anybody? And I think we need to stop that.
Yeah, we need to really come
Yeah.
up with humanity
Mhm.
and love
Yeah.
and kindness and grace. I feel for me, I don't consider myself a religious person. I consider myself a Christ follower.
Mhm.
And of course, I always say this all the time because, being in these United States, I would never want someone to have to deny who they are and what they love, no
Right.
matter if it's, what you're following, because that's just the beauty of diversity in this country.
Mhm.
So for me, I'm unapologetic. I love to follow the teachings of Christ.
Yeah.
And as a result of that, I'm called to love. And I am called because if you recall, Jesus was killed by religious people.
Right.
And, and because he was standing up for the oppressed,
Mhm.
because he was standing up for people who they ostracized, the same thing is going on today.
Yeah.
The same thing is going on today. No different. So I believe my biggest impact is going to always to stand up for the oppressed. And the
Mhm.
people that I want to impact, the people that I want to help teach, I want them to get that. I want them to understand it is your job, it's your duty, it's your service to this country, to your whole overall mission is to advocate for
Mhm.
the oppressed. Stand up for them, right? But if you got shame, guilt, blame in your story, you're not going to be able to bridge that gap.
Right.
You're not going to be able, the epiphany that people need to have to bridge the gap is to be able to come up with this understanding that, you know what? I got a lot of stuff to work on.
Mhm.
How can I help? Like, tell you out, call you out. I got to work on my own self.
Yeah.
And then when I work on my own self, I'm open to hear your story. I'm open to be more empathetic and to understand where you're coming from
Mhm.
because we're not doing that. We're not understanding that at all. There's this other thing I talk about, which is passion. I'm
Mhm.
a passionate person, Rob, if you haven't noticed. I love
God,
to be passionate.
full of energy.
Well, by passion, when you're passionate and you're getting in the conversation, I always use the acronym to pass on blurting out what you believe in right away because
Mhm.
it always comes from our bias. So the passing stands for and passion. pause, assess, get some space, and speak. Pause, assess, get some space, and speak. If you pause right away, if it's in, because, but this is a practice because our first initial is to kind of go right at people.
Yeah.
But if you pause first, you assess what's going on in your brain. Oh my gosh, here I go again. I'm judging someone. And get some space, and that's just taking a breath, or maybe you need to sleep on it, but then speak, right? But a lot of people, what we do is we speak and then we get space. Sometimes it's permanent. We assess what's going on and it's a permanent pause. We never ever go back and talk to people, right? And that pass, it goes into having insight. You become open and you become more knowledgeable. Knowledgeable, the K is silent in the passion acronym, but you gain insight in other people.
Right.
You become more open and you learn more. But most people aren't willing. That's a lot of work, Rob. It's
Oh,
for
yeah.
people to slow down.
But
And I don't know
that's
the
what
willingness.
makes, when you can follow that, that's what makes you a rock star.
Yeah,
You know,
absolutely.
when I first got on social media, and some people have listened to my story before, but
Mhm.
I kind of walked on eggshells. I wanted to
Mm,
please everyone.
mm,
The
mhm,
problem was I wasn't pleasing myself
mm, mhm,
because I'm a very sarcastic person.
mhm.
And that sarcasm rubs people the wrong way. Well, some of them. The people that really gravitated towards me loved they loved to laugh. They loved,
Yes.
for me to tell these stories. And that's when I started shifting away from writing these. I still write brilliant books, but I started shifting more
Yeah,
towards
you do.
funnier books. The whole Rob Versus series is all wit and humor and
Mhm.
sarcasm. And, you know, they have probably gotten me more business than all the other ones combined.
Yeah,
But, I had to be true to myself. And when I
absolutely.
became true to myself, I felt that I was shining better.
Mhm,
Maybe not to everybody, but to those that really wanted to hear my message, it resonated better with them.
absolutely.
But
Identity is everything.
I
Yes.
yeah, I think that there's a lot of people that they struggle with their identity. They
Mm,
don't know how to bring it out. They're
mhm.
ashamed of it. Their fear, gets the most of them, and they create these businesses that could be so much better, but
Mhm.
they don't want to offend anybody.
Yeah, yeah. For me, um, people pleasing is not going to get you anywhere, and that's
Yeah,
for anyone. I should say, just for me. But we live in a culture where we want to be liked.
yeah,
That's the little like button.
hmm,
Everybody loves my videos or whatnot. But you have to make certain that you focus on who. What's your intention? Is get clear on your intention.
hmm,
For me, my intention always, my intention is not a physical or a material possession of intention to be liked by that. For me, I'm praying all the time, so I want to do things that are everlasting, very spiritual. For me, it's pleasing God, and that's counterculture to this to the way that things are. I'm called to love my enemies. I'm called to forgive. I'm called to find ways to create hope and love and community and compassion and truth. And so as a result of that, I'm going to offend people. People are not going to like what I say because, how dare you? And then plus being an advocate, I'm one of those types of people is like, let's find a solution.
hmm,
And that could mean that we need to just open ourselves up and listen to
right,
people with different backgrounds, different religions, different coming from different spaces, especially with all the social systemic racism issues that are going on today. That requires, a lot of us to be able to sit down and, if we're not dealing with our own inner issues and we
hmm,
don't have a clear identity, then we're going to be holding other people hostage
right,
for, things that are internal to us, and it becomes very personal.
hmm,
And then we don't get to the policy and practice changes that need to happen and then creating those behavioral changes. So it starts with a clear understanding of who you are. That's
hmm.
why my program that I do often, it starts right there. Do you know who you are? Right? You got to know who you are. And for
I
me,
think that would scare me if I walked in your office. Do you know who you are?
you know who you are. right?
I'm out.
But yeah, right, exactly. And for me, let's talk about humor for a little bit. I'm all about that. I was class clown my senior year. That would be Diana. I will honestly say, Rob, though, I have to be completely transparent. Just in a moment of realness, when I talk about this pandemic and everything hurting and harming and people feeling a sense of overwhelm and anxiety, I went through that
Mhm,
in March. I called it the George Floyd pause because I was going through a transition in my own physical life,
mhm,
and and I was starting to feel this overwhelm. My humor, my joy, my hey, what's up, kind of went flat.
mhm,
And I was allowing, right, as we talked about at the beginning, I was allowing what was going on at the outside world to really affect me.
mhm.
And then also, too, spiritually speaking, I have this amazing mission that I'm on to freaking change the world. And I know God has empowered me to do that. And I have to realize that sometimes I'm not fighting what's going on in the world, but what's going on in this world, like
Mhm.
this whole spiritual world. Because when you tap into your gifts and your mission, sometimes stuff comes in your way as a test to see, are you going to get over that? Are you going to plow through that? Are you going to move through that? And that's why my need to pray and my need to really understand the deep, deep, deep issue that
Mhm.
I need to do is bigger than what I can even see.
Right.
Because Rob, I believe you and I and other people that you're trying to impact, our work should outlast our human existence.
Right. That should be our legacy. That's what we leave behind for
Absolutely.
others.
Absolutely. And until you start to really kind of focus your mind in that,
Mhm.
it really is not that life changing.
Yeah.
And until but when you recognize that, you go, oh my gosh, I do have to stand guard at my mind, not allow all that stuff come in because I don't have time.
Right.
I got to get busy with my mission,
Mhm.
and then realizing that sometimes there's these wars that are going on that you have nothing to do with.
Right.
That's not a part of what you need to be focusing on, but it's easy to get caught up. So I just wanted, in a moment of transparency, to let you know I'm not immune.
Yeah.
I'm not super goddess Diana, although my name is Diana and that was Wonder Woman. I do know that. But I'm
And
not
I
immune,
bet
and
she
so I
has
have
the
to work on.
bracelets too, huh?
I know, right? I should have worn my bracelets. Um, yeah. So yeah. I mean, I think that's something that I really feel I wanted to share with your
No, and
audience.
and and I don't think anybody was immune to the pandemic. Nobody expected it to last this long, and I think
Yes.
after the second or third month, I was feeling it too.
Hmm.
I love going to events, not
Hmm.
whether to speak or to network with people in the audience.
Oh gosh, yes.
Um, but I haven't been able to go anywhere for months.
Right.
And it's like
Right.
I need that human interaction. And I
Ew.
don't, Zoom is great. It's great for
Yeah.
podcasts. It's great for, short communication. But, you know, all these live events, all these schools,
Right.
all this, everything is on Zoom
Hmm.
now. And it's like
Yeah.
Zoom overload.
Yeah.
I need that physical interaction with somebody.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people were starting to feel it.
Absolutely. And I was 100% on that one because I feel like for myself that, I get my energy from people.
Mhm.
I get my energy from myself, but I
Right.
really energized, right, when I'm around other people. Some people tend to kind of, but that's where I really shine. Zoom fatigue is a thing.
Yeah.
And so that also plays a role because we are one another beings. We're
Right.
human beings, but we're one another. We rely upon each other. And one of the I've never heard that research where people are talking about people that live the longest and how and why.
Mhm.
And you love this TED talk that a woman did, and I can't think of her name at the moment, but she was talking about, and there's also the blue zone diet, the blue zones that talk about where people live the longest and
Mhm.
why. It's connection, it's
Mhm.
social interaction,
Yeah.
not just on social media, but knowing that you're a part of a group, of a tribe, you're meeting frequently, you're having that interaction. that is better than sipping, green juice, although I do love green juice. Some people are getting nauseous at the moment, but it's good for you, right? I mean, and it
Yeah.
helps you
Iced tea is good
feel
for me too.
iced tea, awesome. And it helps you, it helps your overall way of being.
Mhm.
And it's one of the contributing factors to a long, healthy life.
Yeah.
And so I talk a lot about that in my Rise Advocates session, where, if I could just tell you right quick, some of the frame of that is that we start off with your mindset mastery,
Mhm.
calling, understanding your calling and getting mastering that. And mastery is not to be confused with the term that I'm perfect now. It's called,
Mhm.
it's an ongoing practice.
Right.
Then we have personal development. We do a bit of professional development mastery. And then we get into advocacy about what does advocacy mean? Why are we called to be advocates? And we close out the frame of the to become a certified rising advocate with service.
Mhm.
Everything's always about service and being with other people and giving, because that helps people resonate on a higher level.
Right.
And then if we can take all of that and then pay that forward and do that for other people, the professional women I'm working with, work in schools, in the organizations that they're in their communities. Could you imagine the shift that happens? And the reason also too, Rob, I focus with women is because there's such a gap in women in certain professions,
Mhm.
especially in organizations. And a lot of that has to do with the gender stereotypes that we have bought into all over these years. Being a Black woman and being a woman working in organizations where I've always been the first, either Black woman here, Black woman there. The issue I primarily had was being a woman.
Yeah.
Right. I didn't see a lot of it stemming back to my ethnicity. I thought it stemmed back to my gender.
Mhm.
And primarily because I was in male dominated fields.
Mhm.
And so, what if we could equip women and to understand their voice, understand their calling, to gain a set of tools that will help them, and then serving young girls today? That's amazing. That would be amazing.
So
So that's
how does
yeah.
the audience get a hold of you? Where do they go?
You go to riseadvocates.com and you can learn about the course that I am going to be relaunching in January. It's going to be an online course. And folks can also reach out to me on Instagram and Facebook. And you can go to Diana Patton. And I have actually a group that I've formed on Facebook. It's a private group. So it's called Women Who Rise and Advocate. And it's a private group where we are working together to sharpen one another so that we're encouraging one another. So, folks can rise up, They
Mhm.
can find me there. I also have risewithdiana.com that talks about the work I do in schools on a limited level. But you can learn all about that in my blogs there. So, several ways that you can get a hold of me. So, again, it's riseadvocates.com or risewithdiana.com or Facebook and Instagram. Love to have folks connect.
See, this is why you guys need to go over to her websites, to her social, and learn more about her. And if you're stuck in any dimension, whether it be fear, whether it be, you just can't overcome something, Diana is the person that can help you out, AKA Wonder Woman.
Oh,
So
I like it. I want to do it. I should have worn my little outfit. Need a cape.
yeah, I've
Thank you, Rob.
never had someone wearing a Wonder Woman costume on the show, but
Yeah,
we can make it happen.
I could make that happen. I have to think about that. Maybe if I come back on, I'd like to do that. Yeah.
There we go.
Awesome.
So that's an invitation to come back on. So
I
I
love
want to
it.
thank everybody for listening, and we'll catch you on the next episode. Adios.
Thanks, Rob.